The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions. Welcome to a lights out edition of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with my co-host Jonah Bronstein. We're joined by MMA promoter Shawne Merriman. How about that? Totally a new line of work for him, although you've been doing it for a few years. We're going to talk about your upcoming event, Lights Out Extreme Fighting 10, taking place Saturday, August 26th at Casino Palma. That's in San Diego County. I'm guessing the core audience here on Tim Graham and Friends probably won't be getting tickets to that. Got a lot of Buffalo watchers and listeners here, but you can watch it on Fubo Sports Network. Fubo is something totally different. I guess don't be looking for it at Fubo. Shawne, thanks for doing this.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
So Shawne, tell me about this transition to go from NFL player, that happened a bit ago, 10 years ago. You got into broadcasting, and now you've gravitated to something that seems like a fit for people who've known you over the years, and you're going back to your training with Jay Glazer back in the day. This does seem like the type of thing that if you were to say 10 years from now, Shawne Merriman is going to be an MMA promoter, people would have nodded and said, yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, no, I joke around with some of my friends now, and then everybody's kind of made this transition out to football and what everybody's doing. And you're right, when everybody brings up the MMA side of it and MMA business, they say, "Yep, that's right up Shawne's alley." And so what happened was, man, I just grew a passion for the sport, right? I think that my training during the off season, I originally was doing it just to be a better football player, be able to use my hands a lot more, conditioning, being able to open my hips, doing some of this pummeling and jiu-jitsu and all that stuff, to launch in Lights Out Extreme Fighting in 2019. And, we've quickly jumped in the ranks with Fubo Sports, now being top 5 most watched on Fubo Sports. And this next big event we have coming up in San Diego. Actually, it's my first time doing an event, period, in San Diego since I left there. And so we wanted to make this one a special one. Like you said, it'll be live on Fubo Sports August 26th at Casino Palma.
How would you describe, or if you go back and reflect on how the overlap from your MMA training, when did that begin to impact your pass rushing?
From 2005 to 2006. To be honest, when I got to the NFL, I wasn't that great with using my hands. I relied a lot on the speed and power and athleticism to either go around guys or bull rush them inside, but I wasn't that great with my hands. And that's what got me better, being able to use my hands. And when I'm tired or hurt or not myself, I can always go back to just fall back on using my hands. And I try to talk to any guy that's playing right now, either former or current, to pick up a combat sport, man. I'm not saying you got to go out and, have any exhibition fights or anything like that, but I think overall it's just going to help you out more with your sport.
The New England Patriots legend Andre Tippett was known as one of the great hand fighters, maybe the best hand fighter among pass rushers. He was a black belt martial artist. I don't recall the discipline off the top of my head, but he really made it popular because he was so good at it. Who are the best hand fighters in the NFL today, Shawne?
I think right now, currently, it's probably Aaron Donald. Or you're talking about on the defensive line. You got some other guys that's really good at using their hands. But when you talk about actual hand combat, to me, Aaron Donald pops out. because he's an extremist. And I know they posted that one clip of him using the fake knives or whatnot and things like that. But he is a hand combat technician. And I think it's really due to him, him being his size, having his speed, and being able to use his hands. A guy of his size shouldn't be able to take somebody that's 320 plus pounds and lift them off of their feet, right? They just shouldn't. But his hand combat skills is bar none in NFL right now.
Anybody on the Bills that you see has some of those qualities?
Yeah, I mean, look, Vaughn is really, really good with his hands as well. Most of the guys that's really good with their hands were either undersized or kind of lacking in the area. And for me, it was like I relied on it when I got hurt. When I tore my Achilles, I wasn't really as fast anymore. I didn't have that explosion anymore. And so I would get there a little bit slower than I would typically get there. And that's how I even stayed in a league a couple extra years, because I was relying on my hand combat, because I didn't have that anymore. I didn't have the explosion. I wasn't the same player, but I was able to, kind of fall back on being able to use my hands.
Andre Tippett, by the way, a 7th degree black belt. I don't want to shortchange the guy just by calling him a mere black belt. He's a 7th degree black belt in karate, and there's a specific form that I can't pronounce, but it is karate. You mentioned Aaron Donald, number one, which doesn't surprise me because he's a unicorn. He is a defensive tackle, and yet totally plays like an edge rusher almost. But how would you break down hand fighting among interior defensive linemen versus edge rushers? Because I'm thinking that that's probably something that came along much later to that interior position than guys were being taught on the edge to do that.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because these interior guys, they're more square up and down the middle as they're pass rushing. So their first initial hand combat is going to be down the middle of a guy. And then they start to work the outside shoulders or the inside and outside shoulders of a guy. When you're a pass rusher on the outside in a 5 technique or a 7 technique, you're using half a man hand combat, right? So you instantly going to use working the guy's half body, whether it's their inside or outside, but it's very seldom down the middle initially, even though you probably will end up there. So the thought process and the mind process through that whole thing is, hey, you hit a guy hands right as soon as you get out your stance, you're right down the middle of your interior, and then you start to work a half a man. On the outside, it's a half a man first, and then it's everything else second.
Do you see a guy out there, Sean, who has this as a missing component to his game, as if to say, add hand combat to this guy's repertoire and he is elite? Is there a guy that that maybe it's missing, or is everybody taught this by this stage at a very high level?
Yeah, and it's the thing is, we talk about Tippett and got a couple guys back then who was doing it. Now it's kind of across the board. You look at the top 10 pass rushers in the NFL right now; they're all really, really good at using their hands. And I got a chance to work with Chuck Smith, right, who's now I think a defensive line coach for the Ravens. But outside, he's a pass rush coach, and I worked with him. He's one of the best. Chuck Smith that played for the Falcons back in the day. He's the best pass rushing coach that I've ever worked with. And now when guys go see him, it's all about hand combat and being able to use your hands. Before anything else, it's like speed, get off, use your hands right away. And I don't think it was always like that early on. Guys now know that has to be a part of your game.
I want to ask you about your days with the San Diego Chargers in a very specific way that applies to this year's Buffalo Bills. I know that as somebody who is also involved with the NFL media, you're paying attention. You know what the storylines are. You played for the quintessential great coach who couldn't win it all. Marty Schottenheimer is the name that is dropped at all times when it comes to that. Great coach, just couldn't get it done in the postseason. Sean McDermott has kind of taken over that as among current coaches. He's got a long way to go, I think, to knock Marty Schottenheimer off that perch. But I think a lot of Bills fans who have short memories, who don't remember that team that you came to that was in the middle of a 17-year drought, there are a lot of Bills fans. I get it in my mailbag submissions all the time. They're ready to move on from Sean McDermott. What would be your educated advice on moving on from a coach, or knowing when it's time to maybe get you over the hump, or just your experience of having the frustrations of getting so close, and then whether or not a change is made. I'll leave it open at that. I don't want to walk you down any path.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some similarities there. And look, the NFL is a win right now basis. It's performance based, and once you stop doing that, or you're not getting a championship, you're right. People are going to be calling for you to get out. Right, it's just a part of the business, and I've seen it several times. People calling for Coach Sean McDermott to move on from him. What you got to really realize and understand is look at the whole grand scheme of everything. Right, that division just got better. I mean, that really is the key. And I seen that back when I was at Chargers, and you make these these comparisons. Teams like Kansas City, the Raiders even started to get better. They beat us, right, my last year with the Chargers, and we would stump them for years. And so that's what we're seeing out of that AFC East right now. It's less about them not being a good team anymore, getting over the hump, more than this period of window that they have with Josh Allen and Diggs and that defense, those guys that play up front. You have this window where you're supposed to go out and try to win a championship, right? Because that division is going to get better. Aaron Rodgers being on the Jets now, they become a better team. When Tua is healthy, they're a much better team. They got Tyreek Hill, Phillips, guys are popping up on the defense side of the ball who can go and play. And if you go out, if the Patriots go out and get a big play wide receiver and some more weapons on the offense side of the ball, which it looks like they're trying to do, Mac Jones is going to be better. And so to me, and how I look at it, because I've been through it, it's less about them not being a good team and more about everybody else in that division is just catching up. And you got to take advantage of that window you guys have of going out and potentially winning a championship.
So what would be your advice to Bills fans in terms of patience regarding having this window, having Josh Allen, and 13 seconds? I don't know that I'm on record as saying you can't fault them for not coming through last year. They went through so much with Damar Hamlin, with their co-owner being in the hospital, with the Matt Araiza situation, with Dawson Knox's brother dying, with having to play 3 road games in a 12-day span because of weather moving and winning them all, by the way. Yeah. They went through a lot. They were out of gas. A lot of people, but a lot of fans don't want to give them any sympathy there. It is, you were the Super Bowl favorite. You came up short. So again, how much patience should be in play here?
Yeah, I mean, fans aren't patient, right? They just aren't, especially when you should win, right? You should go out, and the caliber team you have right now, you're more than capable of winning these games and potentially getting a championship. So fans are not going to be patient to that at all. I would say this, out of everything you named, they're a very resilient team, right? And what I hope don't happen, what I kind of see a little bit happening is, when you start to lose or you're not living up to the expectations of fans or people that's watching, people start to nitpick, right? And every single thing that's going on. And one of them being, the Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs situation is all season thing. And, you got 2 guys who are very close friends. And if Stephon doesn't show up to a certain thing, or it seems like there's some kind of animosity, it's just going to be amplified because people have 1,000 other gripes. They're just adding that one in, and people start to look at everything and micromanage every part that's going on wrong with them at this point. And that happens when you don't take the opportunity to win these games and get a championship when you have a championship caliber team. And so that's my biggest, kind of fear for them, is that they could fall into that hole where the littlest thing that happens is going to be amplified, going to be blown out of proportion, because people are already, in a sense, pissed off on them potentially not winning when they should win. And that I see kind of, happening here down the road.
Do you think that Stephon Diggs missing all of the voluntary OTAs and one of the days at the mini camp, if you were a defensive player on the team, how would you kind of react to that?
No, no, not at all. And then, when you look at a guy like Stephon Diggs and what he's accomplished and what he's done, these involuntary workouts and things like that, of course, you want everybody there. You want everybody there on the team to cause that unity, that camaraderie. I get it. Somebody that caliber who's been doing it as long as he has at that level, I don't look too much into that, right? I don't say that there's because of the contract dispute or there's a problem on the team. Everything everybody knows, and Josh Allen has been extremely vocal about their relationship and what he feels about Diggs. Stephon, to be honest, and obviously I know him well because he's a former Terp and so forth. He has a lot of off the field, things that he want to do. And the only time to be able to do it is during the offseason, because right now, from now point on, is go time. And you got to be there. It's mandatory. And you want to also show your teammates like, hey, I'm here, right? We're all together. I'm putting in the time, putting in the effort. But I just don't look into those smaller things when it comes to somebody of Stephon Diggs' caliber.
How things have changed, like you saying, nitpicking when you have Stephon Diggs not showing up for one mandatory workout versus what it used to be with the Buffalo Bills. For instance, when you arrived, Sean, and this is a totally different organization. You played under Ralph Wilson ownership, Buddy Nix, the general manager, Chan Gailey, the coach. Everybody has been changed out. There are very few people, I'm guessing, when you show up to Orchard Park to see a game who are even with the team. Even the communications department has been totally overhauled. All the assistant coaches, the scouts, there might be a couple of scouts left over. But during that 17-year drought, when you arrived, well, hell, I mean, you even go back to the 80s, when Tom Cousineau refused to report to the Bills. Jim Kelly went to the USFL, trashed Buffalo before he was forced to come to Buffalo against his will. Vontae Davis quitting at halftime of a game. Anquan Bolden signing, sticking around for a week and saying, I don't want to be here. Dre Archer refusing to report after being claimed by waivers. Richie Incognito reported against his will from the St. Louis Rams. Sean Merriman took a couple of days to get to Orchard Park.
Yeah.
Let me put people in maybe your frame of mind. Let me take a shot. Let me take a shot at it, Sean. But here's a guy who started his career with 3 Pro Bowls in his first 3 seasons. Rookie of the Year 2005, All-Pro 2006 on a 14-win team, and I think led the NFL in sacks your second year, right? You were All-Pro. Yeah. 2007, get to the AFC Championship game ahead or trailing by only 2 points heading into the fourth quarter against the 2007 New England Patriots, a pretty good team, by the way, and then getting claimed off waivers by the last place Bills. What's going through your mind at that point, joining that organization?
To keep it, 100 and be honest about this, Tim, I didn't want to go. I just didn't want to. And it wasn't the city of Buffalo that was concerned about me. It was the record at the time. And them practically, 5 or 6 games into the season, already probably 1 or 2 games of being out of the playoffs before I even get there. So, the call from Buddy Nix was not it wasn't a fun one, right? Where I was just up front. I said, guys, look, I said, Buddy, I love you. Please tell Mr. Wilson, thank you for the consideration. I don't want to be there. I'll come and see you, is my exact words, after the season is over. And then we'll talk about maybe signing a deal in Buffalo, but give me an opportunity to go to a team that's going to possibly go to the playoffs. And Buddy Nix wasn't having it. Mr. Wilson, they wasn't having it. They wanted me in the locker room. They knew I wasn't the player that I once was because of injuries and all that. So they understood. They was like, no, we just want you here in the locker room. And Buddy told me this, and I'll never forget this. He said, Sean, I get it, I understand, but once you get here, you're going to change your mind. You're going to feel different. And I told him, I said, Buddy, I hear what you're saying. I don't care. I'm not coming, right? And he said, okay, well, I'm just letting you know, if you don't come, the fine is $20,000 a day. And I said, okay, well, when you guys still in that plane, right? So I'm not, I wasn't going to take that kind of hit. But he was right, man. It was my first week, and when I got there, and I just saw the city. And when I was in the airport, there were people, when I was leaving and coming out of town, it was crazy. I never seen anything like that. And I would say this, it really was one of the highlights of my sports career and getting an opportunity to play there, because you don't see that. We had a great team out with the Chargers, but San Diego, people got plenty of other things to do, right? The weather's nice. They can go to the beach. They can go do other things. And people came and supported us because we had an all-star of a team, right? We had 4 or 5 different Hall of Famers. We won a lot of games. It's easy to go and support the Chargers, but very seldom do you get the type of love that you get in Buffalo. And, it'll be times I'll be walking on the street or going to a restaurant and people just wave and talk to you, stop and talk to you like you're a second or third cousin, right? And I was like, hold on, this is, without even asking for a picture, just stop and talking to you and, know everything about your career. So I didn't experience that before. And I was fortunate, even I was scratching and, screaming not to go there. I was fortunate to be able to see that. Because that kind of love I haven't seen in a fan base in that kind of capacity.
What is it about that then that it brings you back for? I think you said you come to a game every year. You didn't play here for very many years, but it seems like you're very attached to this community from those 2 seasons you were in Buffalo. Yeah,
it's almost you feel indebted a little bit, because let's be honest, man, I wasn't when I was getting there. I wasn't the same player. I wasn't explosive as I was. I just, I wasn't close to the player I was those 3 years. And, banged up, injuries, torn knee, fully reconstructed knee, torn Achilles. I just wasn't the same. But, the love that I got there is that I was still that same player that I was. And, to kind of get welcomed like that with open arms, it doesn't really happen, that way. And, I ended up talking Nick Barnett and Kurt Morrison and Mario Williams, all these guys to come there. And I think that, Buddy Nick's kind of sent me on those missions. And hey, I got Mario Williams coming in today. I know you guys got a relationship. Or I got Nick Barnett coming in today. I got Kurt Morrison. He said, "Aren't you and Kurt friends?" I said, "Yeah, that's my boy. I need you to talk to him." And so I became like a bridge to kind of get more, high caliber guys out to play with me. And then it was great, man. I wouldn't change that part of it for the world. What was your pitch to Mario Williams? Because he took a while to make that decision, maybe a bit longer than you did. I guess he got probably tired of me calling him or texting him, but it was the same thing I explained to why I went there. And then also re-signing, right? Outside of, obviously he had a pretty good contract, but I told him we were on a few players away from being a really good team, and we were, right? I was so shocked when I got there in 2010 or whatever it was, the type of players that they had in the locker room, with Fred Jackson, Stevie, and Fitzy, and all these guys. I'm looking like, how the hell are you guys 0-5, 0-6? How is that possible? And you look around at that team, Chris Kelsey and Williams and all. I mean, they were stacked. And so before I got there, I'm like, how in the hell you guys are 0-5, 0-6? It didn't make any sense. And so my pitch to Mario Williams, these guys, like, we're a player away like you, right, to being able to turn this thing around. And we were, right? We needed a veteran like Nick Barnett and Kurt Morrison. These guys, we needed them guys there. And so I was a, intricate part in trying to help us get to where we needed to go.
All right, I'm asking this with a smile on my face. What happened at the border, Sean? It's one of the great Buffalo sports mysteries. What'd you go through?
I went through hell, man. I'd actually, when I came out to Buffalo, I literally packed all my stuff, in the car, and I had literally half of my place, because I didn't leave out any furniture, whatever. I had my suitcases, electro machines, and all my stuff, everything. I had everything with me. And, I didn't know that we wasn't supposed to travel across the border with this stuff, stuff that, you can't, big machines, and it didn't sit well. So it was a little bit embarrassing, man, but it wasn't like, I wasn't mad at it. I get it. I mean, I went across the border with a truck full of equipment and clothes and suitcases, and electrical machines and things that I didn't know. There were medical devices. I had no idea. And anyway, it turned out to be all right. But, initially came out like, guys, I mean, it's I got pulled over at the border. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I look back on it now like, damn, that sucked. But it wasn't. I don't think it was big as it came out to be.
I think that the Bills training facility has gotten a little bit better since 2010. And I would not be surprised if you were bringing things over the border that even the Buffalo Bills didn't know existed or they didn't even have. You were probably better equipped than the Bills training room at that time.
I was, man. I had all the hyperbaric machines, the big expensive stuff, all the filter aeration, I had lasers, I had lasers in the car. I mean, I had, everything. I probably spent, $100 and something plus $1,000 on just medical devices and equipment. And if I didn't know that you couldn't carry that stuff across the border without, documentation and all this stuff. I mean, I had a bunch of stuff, man. And but you're right. I had this for me personally. I'm sure they got better with their equipment and everything else. But I'm so used to doing everything on my own, man, and I'm sure they got better with it.
Now, if I could ask you another smaller mystery, but I was always curious about this. A few years back, you were supposed to be putting some fans through tables in the parking lot of the Bills games, and that didn't happen. How did that idea come about, and then what happened that prevented that from actually coming to fruition?
Yeah, so I was getting a bunch of requests for that anyway, to slam a couple fans through the tables, because that, obviously that was a thing. And what happened was I got the team had reached out and said, hey, they think that's fun, that's cool, but they'd rather me not do it, right? And of course, I got still a really good relationship with the team and the people in the front office, media department, the community service department. And they all loved it, the idea. They thought it was great. It was like, Sean, it's just a little bit too risky, on the grounds. And so I said, okay, all right. What if I do it in the grass somewhere? And I was like, just joking around, but I just respected the team, and I had a really good relationship, and they asked me not to do it. So,
what do you think about that phenomenon? That wasn't really going on, I think, when you played here, but over the years, that's become a very common thing that happens in parking lots and elsewhere around Buffalo.
Social media, man. I mean, social media. I think that when it came to that, it was the most entertaining thing by any team in the league. Like, no one had something that was that exciting than Bills Mafia was, and throwing and jumping through tables and things like that. Man, it got so big that I know that the team didn't like it happening, right? Because somebody heard or they didn't want to be known as that, but. That Bills Mafia is something different, man. Like I said, I can't really stop talking about them enough because, it's one thing to see it on social media. It's another thing to pull up in Orchard Park at 10 in the morning or 9:30 in the morning, and it being 50,000 people out there plus in the parking lot. That people selling their spaces in their garage and driveways in the communities because the parking lot is filled up, right? You see everybody like parking cars on lawns, and it was one of those things that it's hard to describe unless you see it for yourself. I mean, I'll give you a prime example, man. When we beat the Patriots, right? We beat the Patriots when I was out there, and that city was on fire for like 2 days. They had to shut things down. Roads were closed, businesses were closed. I mean, it was crazy. And, I still haven't seen anything like that. I've never been a part of anything like seeing, something of that magnitude, man. That was next level.
What about your experience with World Wrestling Entertainment? Speaking of being dropped through tables, have you ever been dropped through a table as part of a routine as a pro wrestler?
No, I haven't. But it was part of my training that I was going to end up doing at some point. So when I was working with the WWE at their facility in Orlando, they had just built the state of the art. I mean, this facility was ridiculous, right? They had all the things in it, like 10 rings, all the equipment to work out. They had a full-on big gym, a full-on rooms where you go and cut your promos and things like that. This place is amazing. And they used to have what we call the eye in the sky in there, right? So Vince McMahon is actually watching people work out or watching tryouts from his office, from the cameras that's in there. And so he actually watched my workout, and he basically told them to him, like, sign him. Like, I went through the workout for an hour. Billy Gunn, I don't know if you remember, watched wrestling too much, but Billy Gunn was my in-ring coach. Regal was was the grappling coach there. Dusty Rhodes was the character developer. JBL it was crazy. All the people who I watched and admired growing up was taking me through my workouts. So that was fun. Hosting WrestleMania in New Orleans. I obviously, growing up being a fan of WWE, now to get sitting by, Mankind and Shawn Michaels and Booker T, these guys are up here on the panel with me and we're talking during the WrestleMania. So that was a great experience, man, that I can't really, I'm glad I got a chance to be a part of that for that period of time with the WWE Network.
What do you think your character would have been? You mentioned Dusty Rhodes probably would have had a lot of influence on that, but as a fan, and then going through that process, that's something you probably gave a lot of thought to. What would you be? Would you be a face? Would you be a heel? Did you have a costume ready to go? What was in play here?
So I was at NXT was down there. I don't know if you know what NXT is. It's like their minor league or whatever it is, but it's huge in other countries and whatnot. It's still massive. I was sitting back there for 2 hours watching everybody else, cut their promos. And these are all the people who are superstars now that was there in NXT when I was there. So you name it, they were there. So right before I'm about to get up, I'm there for 2 hours, watch everybody. It's coming to an end. I'm about to get up. I look at my publicist and I say, hey, you ready to go? Let's get out of here. Right when I'm about to get up, Dusty Rhodes said, I bet you won't believe I'm going to do this, but 56, bring your ass on down here. Right. This is exactly what he said with Dusty Rhodes. Mind you, I had no time to prep. I had no, real experience into what the character was going to be, what they wanted to see out of me. I just knew that when Dusty Rhodes called you there, you go up front. You don't tell him no. I'm like, okay. So I got 30 seconds to come up from the time I got up to the time I had to walk to the front of everybody and cut this promo. And I just cut it. I just started ripping into people, and I had so much material because I just watched for 2 hours everybody's promo. So I just started ripping people who I saw cutting their promos. When I was done, JBL and Dusty walked over to me and said that was one of the best promos, if not the best we've ever seen of anybody who with no experience. And so things were great. And then the WWE Network, they had gone through a bunch of turnover. They had fired like 10 or 15% of their entire staff. So it fell through, but I ended up working with them doing SmackDowns and Monday Night Raws.
Lights Out Extreme Fighting 10. It is Saturday, August 26th at Casino Palma in San Diego County. It will be on Fubo Sports Network. Sean, I know that you have described your MMA organization as a grassroots type pipeline. How would you? I guess I'll just leave the floor open to let people know how you envision or what the business philosophy is of Lights Out.
Yeah, we definitely have the next up and coming superstars, right? There's no doubt about that. Some of these guys are going to probably continue on to go to the UFC. Actually, I think 2 or 3 of them already have contracts on the table for the UFC contender. So we like that. We like giving these guys an opportunity to be seen. We have anywhere between 14 and 16 fights in a night. But more importantly, man, what's happened over the last 6 months is the tech, engagement platforms, these AI platforms, and we've become more of a incubator for a lot of different technologies that's going to be a part. For example, we have chips and gloves that's coming where you can measure speed, power, accuracy, all those things, and there'll be live data that the fans will be able to watch and see on Fubo, right? Where the commentators are talking about that speed that knocked the guy out or punch to the body, whatever it is, where the punches landed at. So all these things are coming. So that is what we've kind of transitioned to a little bit. The fights are going to be great, right? We produce about 3 to 4 hours of live content a night for fights. And once we get this, a lot of these tech things added to what we're building, these other verticals, it's going to make it really fun and interesting for the fans. And I've always been about the fans, man. And that's why I keep talking to even, outside of here, getting a chance to talk to you guys while I talk about Buffalo, man, because, the fans are so important to what we do. And without them, they don't buy any tickets. They don't, show up. They don't do these things, watch on football. And so I've always tried to get back to the fans. And what we're doing now is trying to get the fans more involved with this fan engagement technologies that we're going to be introducing.
What is the long range plan for Lights Out? Do you want to remain at this level, or do you see this as evolving into something else?
I think we're just going to organically grow. We don't. The thing is, man, UFC has done a great job at just branding what they're doing. They're global, and anybody that get in this industry and want to compete with the UFC is just not smart. It's really not. You need to find a way to exist without trying to be them, right? If you're going to have any success in this business, because UFC is the reason why I got into the sport to begin with. I was going to MMA fights. My first one is 2005 that I went to. And I've been going since. I just went to the fight they had, and I watched Brandon Moreno fight, my guy over there, and Bo Nickel. I went to that fight at T-Mobile, so I'm still very active. But anybody that get in this space and want to just go out and, hey, we want to be bigger than UFC is just not to me, in my opinion, not a very smart business move.
Maybe not now at 39 years old, but did you ever flirt with the idea of competing?
Yeah, actually I did. I had we were talking to Bellator back in 2016 when I was training on a daily basis. I was training every day about doing a fight, and the money just wasn't there, right? I was doing a broadcasting thing. I believe I was at, I think ESPN or Fox Sports around that time. And I had my stuff going with Lights Out clothing line, and I was very busy. So I was like, in order for me to go and train, I have to stop doing some of this other stuff. So the money had to been worth it, and the money never got there. But yeah, man, I mean, even still now, I'll jump in and I'll spar on Fridays if we got open mat. I still train, at Randy Couture's gym and, a couple of gyms in LA and California. I like to still stay after a little bit, man. If there was a former athlete or somebody else that wanted to fight, I still would, if I knew the fans wanted to see it. But I love being on this side of things, promoting these up and coming fighters. I got the opportunity, man, to play on the biggest stage there ever will be in this country, and that's in the NFL. And so to be able to kind of transition now to grow this sport in MMA, having that background of being able to see the biggest and the best is why I'm having the jump start that I do.
Is there any potential for bringing your promotion to Buffalo for an event someday?
I always look, when I post stuff about having fights in different cities, man, I'll always get people from Buffalo that want it to happen. And believe it or not, there's a lot of really good MMA fighters in that area. All the way from, I know it's a little bit far, but Albany and Buffalo and Rochester, there's a couple nice gyms in Rochester with a lot of MMA fighters. So it wouldn't be hard to come there and build a fight. I think it'd be a great place to come, man. I would love to come back, back to Buffalo and do something very big.
And then you can incorporate the tables, maybe some sort of, you can do it on your site, at whether it's whatever arena you're renting out, and then you can work that in.
No, that's for sure. And nobody's going to stop me from doing it then. I don't have to worry about any complaining. And by the way, I think that it would fit perfect being at an MMA event, seeing how there's going to be a lot of slamming anyway. So it works out.
I think if you still got any connections at WWE, you should put the idea in their head of a SummerSlam at the stadium in Buffalo with everybody going through tables before and after and during. Would be a sight to see.
You're right about that, man. And I think that works out. And I'm in communication with the guys over at WWE all the time, still. So, I think that's a great idea, man. We go and do an MMA Slam Fest, WWE style.
What are you doing to scratch your competitive itch these days, Sean?
That, I'll get in there and, I work out at the gym. I'll do my weights 3 or 4 days a week, and sometimes 5. But then I'll leave and I'll go do some MMA training. I'll hit the mitts, I'll go through, a class. If I'll go spar, 4 or 5 rounds. And for me, it's just, and I talk about this a lot. A lot of former athletes struggle making that transition when you're done. And it's hard as hell, especially that first year, you're trying to figure things out. That regiment's gone. That whole thing is gone. That's why guys get depressed and everything else, because that you're just moving on to a different part of your life that you haven't experienced. So for me, it helped me out a lot personally, because I was still going to train with other MMA fighters, and I was still competitive, still in that locker room type of environment. And so I think it's important for a lot of guys to at least look at it, right? Go pick up some jiu-jitsu lessons, go do some Muay Thai, go do some boxing, be active again, because it is definitely hard when you're making that transition after football.
Let me ask you this. I don't know what associations you may have with some of these guys, so hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot, but NFL players have not had the best success making the transition to MMA fighting. What is the hurdle, or is there something inherently involved that just doesn't translate?
Well,
and of course, ground fighting, needing not having a wrestling background, but I mean, is it deeper than that?
No, it's that, man. I think that as much as people hate Greg Hardy and just hate him as a person and anything else, he actually had really good success early on. For a guy that was only training a couple of years, fighting people that was training for 10 plus years, he actually made a smooth transition. And at some point in time, he just started to fall off, and he never kind of turned a corner. But you're going to have a guy that plays 4 or 5 years in the NFL and say, you know what, if I don't have this opportunity to continue on my career, I'm still physically fit, I want to compete. And so the money is great enough in MMA now that you can make that transition and still have a second career. When I retired, they wasn't paying guys the way they are now. They just wasn't. So you can come over and easily make 6 figures a year in MMA now that you couldn't do before. And that transition happened. You're not going to get guys that played 10, 15 years, made a lot of money. They're not going to do it. You're going to get the guy that's played 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 tops, 27, 28 years old, and say, you know what? I'm still physically fit. I want to compete, and I want to go make money doing something else and using my body doing it. Those are the type of guys that are going to end up making that transition.
Solomon Renfro, a local fighter, he wasn't an NFL player, but he was a college football player and was able to make that transition to MMA rather smoothly.
Yeah, yes. I don't know if is Solomon Renfro anybody who's on your radar, Sean. I think.
Yeah, there's a few guys, man. I talked to somebody in his camp not too long ago. Somebody the matchmakers talked to his camp. I talked to Scooby Wright. He's playing in the XFL right now. I don't know if he got called up to the NFL or not yet, but he's been on the radar talking to. And then there's a few guys, man, that didn't have that opportunity to play in the NFL that's going to make that transition.
Sean, anything else you want to talk about that we didn't ask you about?
Oh no,
that's a lot of bases.
Yeah, no, just the fight, man. This is our biggest one. So far, we're gonna have close to 16 fights on that night on August 26th. And for those who can't come out and check it out, check us out on Fubo Sports, Fubo TV. If you don't have Fubo, get it. But we have a lot of fan engagement stuff that's going to come here, man. It's going to be a pretty exciting time.
I as somebody who's familiar with boxing telecasts, is Fubo showing all 16 matches?
Yeah, I think they're probably going to show at least 10.
Okay.
Right? They're going to show at least 10.
Yeah, that's a long day.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 or 4 prelims, and then the other 6 will be the pro fights. But we'll get everything, those other 4 fights out the way. We'll still have it, and they'll show it at a later date. But it won't make the telecast, but the 10 fights for sure will.
And for more information, you can go to lightsoutxf.com. That's Sean Merriman's website for his MMA promotion, Lights Out Extreme Fighting. And I'll just give it one more plug here. Lights Out Extreme Fighting 10, Saturday, August 26th, the Casino Palma in San Diego area. And that is going to be on Fubo Sports Network. But who knows? August 26th, you're still on break, with your kids. Maybe you're out there in Southern California and you want to check it out. Sean Merriman will be there. Hell, it's his promotion. It's not like he just throws it together and then has somebody else do it. He'll be there. I'm sure he'll shake a hand and sign an autograph. Sean, thanks for doing this. And best of luck to you in your promotion on August 26th. And we'll see you out in Orchard Park here within the next few months.
You got it, my man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach that takes on each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills to provide creative solutions for their clients. Based right here in Western New York, CTBK is a champion for your business and our community. Additionally, CTBK goes beyond tax and attest services by offering a wide array of consulting and outsourced solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your business, allowing you to focus on your operational and long-term strategic goals. Whether you're a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, the team at CTBK is determined to help you succeed. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400. 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK's one-team approach can work for you.